Compliance is a profession where people work tirelessly to make the world a better place. And there are hundreds of amazing and inspiring women who have helped the field develop into what it is today. Great Women in Compliance is part of the Compliance Podcast Network, so join Mary Shirley and Lisa Fine as they talk with women in compliance who are making a difference.
You're listening to the Great Women in Compliance on the Compliance Podcast Network with Mary Shirley and Lisa Fine. I'm Lisa Fine, and today I'm speaking with Fernanda Beraldi, who is the Senior Director, Ethics and Compliance at Cummins, Inc. Fernanda is Brazilian and started out as an attorney in Sao Paolo. She was involved in one of the first FCPA cases in South America, and that was the beginning of her interest in ethics and compliance. She came to the U.S. for an LLM program at the University of Indiana and has now stayed in the Indianapolis area. Welcome, Fernanda. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And let's talk a little bit about how you started out your career in Brazil. You're practicing law there. And can you talk how that brought you to the compliance path that you're on today?
Yes, absolutely. So around 5 years after I graduated from law school in Brazil, I joined a company called Embraer, which is the third largest aircraft manufacturer in the world. I joined them as a business lawyer. This is my whole background. My background is in business law and corporate law. So I joined them to help them with one specific business unit in their contracts, services and support for aircraft. Very neat. Maybe 1 year after I joined, I joined in 2008. So in 2009, Embraer received a subpoena from the DOJ and the SEC containing allegations of violations of the FCPA. This was the start of, as you may imagine, a whole mess, I would say, within the company.
Going in, huh? It was a really big change.
Exactly. So. Yeah. A whole mess within the company. And then, as I say, companies don't really call each other to benchmark how to go through an investigation. So there was some learning curve on what did Embraer need to do to go through this, and what was the path forward, right? As one of the first company in South America, located in South America, headquartered in South America, going through this.
Yeah.
For me, it was immediately interesting, right? And how just having to be part of this and having to help with producing documents and deposing and providing information, and it's just a lot of things to do. And then, by the way, I kept my job as a business lawyer, so this was like going at the same time.
An ethics job.
Yeah.
And one of the things you also mentioned when we talked before was a bit about learning about the difference of people who, walk the walk and talk the talk, at the company, and sort of how there's like a dichotomy that was in the organ, just generally the differences that you saw or that you were learning from. Talk a little, what did you do in that part?
Yeah, this was an eye opener for me. One of the many eye openers during this whole investigation. I would say, a baby lawyer back then, right? I was not even 30, and just having to go through this 1 year after you were onboarded with the company, when they show you all the videos, and this is this great company that we do everything right. We have a code of conduct. We see the seniors, the C-suite, and on the TV saying how this is important for us, that we do things the right way, etc. And when you start, and again, don't get me wrong, it is a great company, and I learned a lot from them, and I loved working there. But the things you see in paper when you start looking and digging through documents versus what you see on TV, this was such an eye opener for me. So that was the dichotomy, right? Mm-hmm. This is between the walk and talk the talk and walking the walk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if any of our listeners are in a company where every single person is both talking the talk and in fact walking the walk, please call me, because I would like to, bottle up whatever that person is doing for all of us, because I can't imagine in any company, there's always something to deal with, and we all see that.
Correct.
So, yeah. But anyway, so then did that just, because of that, you thought I've always wanted to go to Indianapolis, or did there, how did it move next?
No, this was very funny. So after 6 years, the end of my 5th year with Embraer, I started thinking, okay, with all this learning that I got here between the business law, having to repossess planes and under lease, and for instance, and the compliance and investigation, I think I want to know more about this from the source, right? So what I did is that I, similar to many lawyers that are outside the U.S., I applied for several LLM programs, which is like a Master of Law degree in the U.S., right? Yeah. In between, and I really want to come to the Midwest, right? So I targeted all my applications to the Midwest. I had not applied to the Indiana University just because of my lack of knowledge about Indiana, really. In between my application process and the results I started getting, I had a deal in Indianapolis, a business deal, okay, for a sale of a pre-owned plane. So I came to town to discuss this and to negotiate, and I had a day off after the negotiation. Between my flight back to Brazil, I had a day off, and I decided to go to the law school. Just to, check around. You see, this is the kind of things that I do on my off time. Instead of exploring the museums, I go to the law school. And I learned that they also had an LLM program, and they were immediately very interested in my career and my past experience. And they said, "Why don't you apply? We'll take a look at your application with a lot of interest." And I said, okay. So then this is what I did. I applied to Indiana University, Robert H. McKinney School of Law here in Indianapolis. And while I got accepted in other universities too, McKinney, that is my law school here in Indianapolis, gave me a full scholarship.
Well, that's a great reason in itself.
Exactly. Right. We're talking about, I don't know, $45,000 to $50,000 grants. That's it. Right. And plus the lower cost of living in Indianapolis, and this incentive to come here was really what made me think about Indianapolis as a place to come and spend 12 to 18 months while I was doing my program. That was the idea.
Yeah, and when you got there, you were saying that because you were from Brazil, people really, even though you were interested in compliance, there was an assumption that you would be doing something different, either immigration or something.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that, how you you had this goal and objective, and how you overcame some of those assumptions to,
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of, again, Indianapolis is a very welcoming town, but there was assumptions that while you're from Brazil and you speak 5 languages, why do you want to work with compliance? You'll be perfect with immigration law. And I'm like, okay, and thank you for your suggestion, but I really don't, that's not where my passion is. And again, immigration law is very important, etc. But I had a passion to work with corporations in the compliance function. So it was really, it's like the person feels that they're giving you an opportunity and you have to say, no, thank you, because my path is actually this path that I want to go. A lot of assumptions about Brazil in general. Oh, do you want to do this because Brazilians are all corrupt? Right. Or there was another instance where I had a discussion with a government official here that didn't know anything about Brazil, and he thought I needed to take a canoe to go to law school in Brazil, and that I had monkeys as pets. So, it was really, he didn't know better. Right? He didn't know anything about Brazil, right? So having to navigate those waters of being, and here in Indianapolis, there's not a big Brazilian community, right?
Right.
And having to navigate the waters of being one of the first Brazilians in the law school in Indianapolis, right? A person who had a prior career a person who speaks multiple languages, and still having to hear, wow, you should do immigration law. At first, I was really frustrated with this, right? Because I'm like, this is not what I want to do. There was also the whole assumption, because you're here and, under certain eyes, quote unquote, good looking, people are never going to take you seriously. You're going to be like the Brazilian version of Sofia Vergara, right?
I was going to ask you about not just being Brazilian, but a woman, and both in stereotypes, both in school and then when you started in your roles. So,
yes. So, and yeah, there's all these stereotypes about, Brazilian women being, all the Victoria's Secret supermodels are Brazilian. Some of them, most of them. And there's like, oh, you're from Brazil too. So the first question is always, oh, what is that crazy party called Carnival? I'm like, can we just talk to what I'm meeting you for? I needed to learn how to convey my message and convey what were my interests, but still not completely shutting down people for asking questions about Brazil, right?
Right.
Again, most of them never saw a Brazilian before, right? The things they say in Brazil about Brazil are soccer, corruption, and Victoria's Secret. So can you blame them?
True. There's so that's really, that's interesting. And then, one of the other things that goes along with that is not only do you have that stereotype, you recognize things that Americans may do or say very, very much in terms of their, in terms of how they communicate or how they start meetings. And about too, like we do start every meeting talking about, somebody mentions the weather. And ever since we talked, I think I hear,
oh my God.
I start giggling a little. So apparently, that and some analogies and what surprised you from a point on that.
Yes. So again, I came from a company that was global, but was not in the U.S., right? The company was founded in Brazil. So Cummins was my first job in the U.S., right? I had some externships during the program too. So I noticed that at every meeting, people would start saying, oh, this weather is like great, or, fill the blank. It's great, it's horrible, it's cold, it's going to snow, and did you see the tornado? There's tornado warnings, etc. And I'm like, why do we always start meetings talking about the weather? Brazilians don't do that at all. The weather is a given. Like we just look out the window, it's sunny, hot and humid. So that's not a factor that plays any relevance in our lives, right? Oh, it's going to rain. Yeah. Those are facts that you can assert by just looking out the window. So there's no point in using that for chit chat, right? But here it's just such an important part. So the first thing I had to do after my first week at Cummins, okay, I think I need to download this weather app and look at it every day so I know exactly what to talk about before we start the real part of the meeting, right? I know. And the funny thing is I have team members and direct reports that are outside the U.S., right? So China and India and other parts of the world. And when I have a meeting with them, despite me being Brazilian, and they know that, they start talking to me about the weather too. And I'm like, why? Like the assumption is because I live in the U.S., I need to talk about the weather before I get started in any meeting, right? It's just very interesting. Go ahead. No,
I was going to, the other thing is some of the analogies. Now I'm completely the weather in any different, moment now. And I kind of, as I said, giggle, but you also talk about some of the sort of American phrases or analogies.
Yes. Indiana and Indianapolis, it's a very sports-driven city, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that happens here and that people get wild, it doesn't happen here, it happens all over the U.S., but it's March Madness, right?
Yep.
So when people started talking to me about, oh, are you ready for March Madness? I thought it was a disease that I had to take a vaccine for. And do you have your bracket ready? I'm like, oh my God, I'm missing something that's going on, right? And really didn't understand what was the whole March Madness. The other thing is that before going into a meeting, I told my manager I was a bit nervous, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, you're gonna hit it out of the park." And I'm like, okay. I came from a background where, in Brazil we play soccer. So if a person hits the ball out of the park in soccer, they're missing the goal by a lot.
Yes.
And then I was like, what does it mean? What does he mean? And then I searching, and people, okay, it's a baseball analogy to home run, right? You're going to hit a home run, which is knocking out of the park, which is great in baseball, right?
Yeah.
I thought for a moment that he was wishing, something, when people are like actors, then you say break a leg, right? I thought that's what he was trying to do when he said you're going to hit it out the park. And, those are small, different things that I pay a lot of attention to them today when I'm interacting with my coworkers and my team members outside the U.S. So my communication is clear, right? And they don't feel as much included because I'm using a slang that they don't understand, right? So this is a big learning for me.
I was going to say, they sound like, they're kind of humorous moments and things like that. But on the other hand, they are a way of communicating and trying to communicate effectively with people with different backgrounds, regardless. And, it sounds, particularly being in Indianapolis, there's a whole local flavor that, is unique, and getting used to that as well. And then having to use the slang is not easy.
Yes, it's not easy. And I don't consider myself a person who is not fluent in English, but it was just like those small things and the small little things that you have to learn. I ended up buying a book that said, the title of the book is How to Speak Hoosier. The book's out there. It's a very old book.
Indiana, listening to our podcast, Hoosier is another word for Indiana. So one of the first ones. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, how to talk Hoosier, which means how to talk like people in Indiana. So I could learn the slangs. Or, for instance, that person threw a stink, which means they made a big deal out of it. I mean, I had no idea. She threw a big stink about it. Okay, what does that really mean? Yeah.
But one of the other parts about it that I wanted to ask you about is that, you with all of that, I mean, you've really grown to, appreciate and really enjoy Minneapolis. I mean, Indianapolis for your career. And then at the same time, your husband is in Michigan and your son is at school there. So, he's, is as a woman, that's sometimes that's a non-traditional thing. And particularly you mentioned that in your neighborhood and in Indianapolis, it's sort of an unusual role. So, how do you handle that woman, as a Brazilian woman, as somebody in your job, and, just how it makes you feel?
Yeah, I don't follow the traditional role, right? My husband moved here around 2 months after I moved here, and he obtained a transfer from his company, and he brought our son with us. But his company's in Michigan, and for the first year, my son was here with me while I was in school. But when I started at Cummins in 2015, we switched, and then he stays with my husband in Michigan. So it's very unusual for everybody around me in my neighborhood. So the first question is, where is your husband? When is he going to move here? I get that question so many times. Mm-hmm. But I said, we're both working parents and we have lovely careers and we love being with the companies we're with. So most of the women around me in my neighborhood are all stay-at-home moms, right? Which is a very noble thing to do, and it's great for you and your family. It's just very different than my reality, right? Where I'm alone most of the time during the week. So there's a lot of assumptions like, are you going to have more kids? And because I only have one, and families around me are like 4 or 5 kids. But no, I'm only having one kid. And he's happy there and I'm happy here, and he comes in during the weekends, and I go there during certain weekends, and there's an expectation that as a Latina woman that I'm the one who needs to stay at home. I'm the one who's the caregiver, and everybody, oh, this must be horrible for you. Yes, I would, of course, love that we were all in the same place, but is it fair to ask my husband, who loves his career, to drop his career to be with me in Indianapolis, right? When he has this thriving career in Michigan. And yes, it is hard. We are both, my husband is a great father, but we're fine this way. If people make it sound like it's horrible, and it is definitely difficult. But when you have a partner that help you to make it work, then it works, right? But the assumption of people is always, oh, this is horrible, must be horrible for you. Your heart must ache and missing them. I mean, I heard that the other day. And yes, and it's almost like no one says that with all the words, but it's almost like, why are you doing this? You're his mom, right? You're his wife, and not like, I am a compliance professional. I have my professional life here, and I am a mom and a wife, but those things do not need to be exactly in the same location for them all to work together, right? Yeah. So it is definitely interesting, and it is challenging for me too, in the sense that I noticed that I had a bias with stay-at-home moms. But like, what are they doing the whole day? I'm doing all those things, right? And it like they're like running to Target, school, football, soccer, and yeah. I'm like solving all those problems, and I noticed that that's the joy for them, and that's the passion for them, and that's absolutely fine, right? It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there are no, I think that people think about those things from their own lens often, and I think that can be a challenge. I don't have kids, and I'm single, so sometimes people will look and think, what is she doing with her time? And I feel like I'm quite busy. There's a lot of stuff to get done, but I think it's really true that it has a lot to do with people viewing things through their own lens and learning from it, and I think it's really important. Which brings me to one, sort of two last questions for you, given all the stuff that we've talked about. And, the last thing is, you are obviously really excited and passionate about your job. What's your favorite thing about that? And, that keeps you there, that makes you really excited about it. And I guess the other thing is, if there's anything else you would want to, mention, in terms of advice or to women, particularly, those, from other countries or cultural challenges, or just anything, else you'd like to share.
Yeah. So I'll start with your first thing. And what I love about what I do at Cummins is that it's just this big, diverse, global company that has the mind and the heart in the right place, which is we want to do the right thing. And it's not carte blanche. I wish it was. I wish it were. But tell me everything you need to do compliance function to get this working, right? And this is a value, the integrity value is embraced. And as a compliance professional, there's nothing more rewarding than having the company backing you up, right? I will never be able to work for a company that does not believe that compliance and ethics are important, and they come first from anything else. Right. Customers are important, of course, but they come. Our integrity should be the way we go about doing business with our customers and with our partners. So that's very exciting for me, and it's just a dream. In terms of advice that I would like to share as a foreign person who's been here in the U.S. now for 5 years, and for people listening, do not allow people to box you in their box, okay? Do not allow people to categorize you. Do not let anybody else tell you what your dream should be based on the way you look like, or the experiences you have, or the things they think you're good at. Follow your own path. Work hard and hustle, but follow your own path. Don't let anybody tell you what's the path based on what their assumptions are of what is good for you.
Yeah, that's so helpful. And I thank you so much for that. And thanks for taking the time to speak with us on the Compliance Podcast Network. I'm Lisa Fine. And on behalf of Mary Shirley and I, thank you so much. And as one quick little end note, separately from everything we were talking about, I was looking at those national days online, and this is going to come out on July 31st. Apparently yesterday, if you're all listening, the day this came out was National Whistleblower Day. So at some point in time, everyone is officially being appreciated. And in the compliance world, we now have a day to thank those who are supporting us going forward. And I just found that to be a little bit of a fun fact and thought I'd share it with the group. So thank you again. And thanks, Fernanda, and take care.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Great Women in Compliance. We hope you'll join us in honoring the great women in the compliance field by subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review.